Welcome back. Imagine picking up a simple penny from your pocket change and discovering that it might be worth far more than 1 cent. It sounds unbelievable, but for some collectors, this has actually happened. Among the many Lincoln pennies minted over the decades, one coin from the late 1960s continues to spark curiosity and excitement. It's the 1969 penny with the Denver Mint mark, often called the 1969 D Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks ordinary, just like thousands of other coins from that era. But behind this small piece of copper is a fascinating story about American history, coin production, and the thrill of the hunt that keeps collectors searching through their change even today. The 1969 D Lincoln penny was produced during an interesting time in United States coinage. In the late 1960s, the U.S. Mint was dealing with a nationwide coin shortage. People were saving coins, collectors were pulling them out of circulation, and everyday transactions needed more small change. To solve the problem, the Mint increased production across its facilities. One of those facilities was the Denver Mint, which placed a small D Mint mark on the coins it produced. In 1969, the Denver Mint struck hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents, sending them into circulation all across the country. The Lincoln penny itself has a long and proud history. First introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln, it was the first regular U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure. The front of the coin shows Lincoln's portrait, designed by Victor David Brenner. Above his head are the words, "In God We Trust." To the left appears the word liberty, and to the right is the year of minting, in this case 1969. Just below the date sits the small D Mint mark, showing that the coin was struck in Denver. The reverse side of the 1969 penny features the familiar wheat ears design that had been used for decades. Actually, by 1969, the design had already changed to the Lincoln Memorial reverse, which shows the famous monument in Washington, D.C. This design replaced the wheat ears in 1959 and remained in use until 2008. If you look closely at the reverse of a 1969 D penny, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial standing proudly in the center, with the words United States of America across the top and 1 cent along the bottom. Above the memorial is the Latin phrase e pluribus unum, meaning out of many, one. In terms of metal content, the 1969 D Lincoln penny was made primarily of copper. At that time, pennies contained about 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. This composition gave the coin its warm reddish color and its familiar metallic weight. Each penny weighs about 3.11 grams and measures 19 millimeters across. These details may seem small, but they matter a lot to collectors when they are verifying authenticity. Now you might wonder, if the Mint produced so many of these coins, why would anyone consider the 1969 D penny valuable? The answer lies in condition, varieties, and the ongoing passion of collectors who look for subtle differences. While most 1969 D pennies are common, certain examples can be surprisingly valuable when they are preserved in excellent condition or when they show unusual characteristics. One factor that makes some coins stand out is something collectors call a mint state condition. This means the coin was never heavily circulated and still retains its original shine and sharp details. Coins that look almost exactly the way they did when they left the mint are far harder to find than worn ones. Over decades of circulation, most pennies get scratched, faded, or damaged. But every once in a while, someone discovers a 1969 D penny that still looks nearly new. High-grade examples of this coin have caught the attention of collectors at auctions and coin shows. While an average circulated 1969 D penny might only be worth a few cents, pristine examples graded at the very top levels can sell for hundreds of dollars. In rare cases where the coin shows perfect surfaces, strong luster, and no visible marks, collectors have paid even more. The difference between an ordinary penny and a high-grade collectible can be dramatic. Another reason the 1969 Lincoln Cent series attracts attention is because of the famous double die variety from that same year. While the well-known double die variety actually comes from the Philadelphia Mint without a mint mark, the excitement around that discovery caused collectors to examine many other 1969 pennies closely, including those with the Denver Mint mark. As a result, the 1969 D penny became part of the broader conversation among collectors searching for hidden varieties and minting quirks. Occasionally, small minting irregularities appear on 1969 D pennies. These might include slight doubling in the lettering, small die cracks, or off-center strikes. Most of these are minor and don't carry huge value, but they still add character to the coin. For collectors, finding any unusual feature can make the hunt more exciting. If you think you might have a 1969D Lincoln penny worth examining, there are a few simple things to check. First, look closely at the date and the mint mark. The D should appear directly beneath the year 1969 on the front of the coin. The lettering should be clear and well-defined. If the mint mark appears oddly shaped, poorly positioned, or looks like it was added later, that could be a sign of alteration. Next, examine the surfaces of the coin. Authentic coins from that period should have the correct copper color and weight. If the coin looks unusually shiny in a way that resembles modern plating, it might have been cleaned or altered. Collectors usually prefer coins that have not been cleaned, since cleaning can damage the original surfaces. Another helpful step is checking the coin's weight. As mentioned earlier, a standard 1969 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If the weight is significantly different, that might suggest the coin has been modified or is not genuine. Many collectors use small digital scales for this purpose. Magnification is also useful. With a simple magnifying glass or coin loupe, you can inspect the details around Lincoln's portrait, the lettering, and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Sharp lines and consistent texture are signs of an authentic coin struck by official mint equipment. There are also a few fun facts about the 1969 Lincoln cent that many people find surprising. For example, if you look very closely at the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, you can actually see a tiny representation of Abraham Lincoln seated inside the monument. This means that on the same coin, Lincoln appears both on the front and on the back. It's a small detail that many people never notice until someone points it out. Another interesting detail is how long the Lincoln penny design has lasted. While many U.S. coins have changed designs multiple times, the Lincoln cent has remained part of American currency for well over a century. The 1969D penny represents a moment right in the middle of that long history. Collectors today continue to appreciate this coin not only for its age but also for its connection to the era in which it was made. The late 1960s were a time of major cultural change in the United States. The country was experiencing historic events in politics, science, and society. Every penny minted during that year quietly circulated through grocery stores, gas stations, and pocket change across the nation, becoming a small witness to history. For many collectors, coins like the 1969D Lincoln penny are exciting because they remind us that valuable treasures don't always look dramatic. Sometimes they appear as ordinary objects that millions of people handle every day. The real thrill comes from knowing that hidden stories and unexpected value might be waiting inside something as simple as a penny. Even today, collectors and hobbyists continue searching through rolls of coins from banks, old jars in attics, and forgotten collections passed down through families. Every once in a while, someone discovers a well-preserved example that sparks fresh excitement in the collecting community, so the next time you come across a penny dated 1969 with a small D under the year, take a closer look before you spend it. Check the condition, study the details, and imagine the journey that little coin may have taken over the past several decades. You might just be holding a small piece of American history that has traveled through thousands of hands before reaching yours. And who knows? That simple penny sitting quietly in your change might hold more than just 1 cent of value. It might hold a story waiting to be discovered, a collectible waiting to be recognized, and a reminder that sometimes the most ordinary objects can carry the most fascinating secrets. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and discovering that this tiny copper coin could be worth far more than 1 cent. For most people, a penny is something they barely notice. But for coin collectors, certain pennies can tell fascinating stories about history, craftsmanship, and sometimes even unexpected value. One such coin is the 1970D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that at first glance looks ordinary, yet has quietly become one of the most talked about coins among collectors. The 1970D Lincoln penny was produced at the Denver Mint in 1970, during a time when the United States was experiencing major cultural and economic changes. America had already landed astronauts on the moon, the Vietnam War was still ongoing, and everyday life was evolving quickly. Through all of this, the U.S. Mint continued producing the humble Lincoln cent, a coin that had already been part of American life for more than 60 years. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. It was also the first circulating U.S. coin to feature the portrait of a real person. The design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, whose portrait of Lincoln became one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. By 1970, that familiar design was still being used. On the front of the coin, known as the obverse, you can see the profile of Abraham Lincoln facing to the right. Above his head is the word Liberty, and in front of his face is the date 1970. Just below the date, if the coin was minted in Denver, you will see a small letter D. That tiny letter is what collectors call the mint mark, and it tells us where the coin was made. The reverse side of the coin shows two wheat ears framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. Above those words appears the Latin phrase e pluribus unum, which means out of many, one. This classic wheat design had been used on Lincoln cents from 1909 until 1958. However, by 1970 the design had already changed to the Lincoln Memorial reverse, which shows the famous monument in Washington, D.C. standing proudly in the center of the coin. That means the 1970 Lincoln penny features Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. If you look closely at the reverse, you can actually see a tiny image of the Lincoln statue inside the memorial building. It is one of the smallest detailed elements ever placed on a U.S. coin. The coin itself was made primarily of copper. In 1970, Lincoln cents were composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. This gave the coin its familiar reddish color and solid weight. Each penny weighs about 3.11 grams and measures 19 millimeters across. At first, the 1970 penny might seem extremely common. The Denver Mint produced more than 2 billion of them that year. With numbers like that, it would be easy to assume the coin has no special value. But collectors know that sometimes the smallest variations can turn an ordinary coin into something very desirable. One of the most famous varieties connected to the 1970 Lincoln cent series is known as the small date and large date variety. While this variation is more commonly associated with the Philadelphia Mint coins of that year, the Denver minted pennies also attracted attention because collectors began carefully studying every detail of these coins. Even more interesting is the possibility of mint errors. In the world of coin collecting, errors are accidental differences that happen during the minting process. These mistakes can occur when dies are misaligned, when designs are doubled, or when other small imperfections appear on the coin. For the 1970 Lincoln penny, collectors often look for signs of doubled letters, unusual spacing, or striking issues that make the coin stand out. A strong strike with bright original color can make the coin far more desirable than a worn example. Condition plays a huge role in determining value. Most pennies spend years circulating through cash registers, pockets, and jars. Over time, they develop scratches, fading, and discoloration. But occasionally, a coin survives in nearly perfect condition, a 1970 Lincoln penny, that still has its original red luster and sharp details can be worth significantly more than face value. While many examples are still worth only a few cents, high-grade specimens can attract serious attention from collectors. Professional grading services evaluate coins on a scale from 1 to 70. A coin graded near the top of that scale is considered extremely well preserved. When a 1970 penny reaches those higher grades, its value can rise dramatically. In some cases, certified examples of this coin in exceptional condition have sold for hundreds of dollars at auction. These are coins that were carefully preserved for decades, often stored in protective holders from the moment they were issued. Collectors are especially interested in coins that display a deep red color. Copper coins naturally darken over time, so finding one that still looks bright and fresh after more than 50 years can be quite remarkable. Of course, not every 1970 penny will bring high prices. Most are still very common, but the excitement comes from the possibility that somewhere in a jar of old coins, there could be an unusually well-preserved example waiting to be discovered. If you want to identify a genuine 1970 Lincoln penny, the first step is simple observation. Look closely at the date on the front of the coin and check for the small D mint mark beneath it. That tiny letter confirms the coin was made at the Denver Mint. Next, examine the details of Lincoln's portrait. On a well-preserved coin, You should be able to see clear lines in his hair and strong detail in his coat and bow tie. The lettering around the edge should also appear crisp and evenly spaced. Turning the coin over, inspect the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. The columns of the building should be clearly visible, and the lettering should look sharp. If the coin has heavy wear, those details may appear smooth or faded. Collectors also pay attention to the coin's color. A bright red surface often indicates that the coin has been protected from oxidation. Coins with a darker brown color have usually spent more time in circulation. Because the 1970 penny is widely known, counterfeit versions are not common, but altered coins can sometimes appear. For example, someone might try to add a mint mark to a coin that originally did not have one. Careful inspection of the mint mark area can usually reveal such changes. Another fun detail about the 1970 Lincoln cent is how it connects to a long tradition of American coinage. The Lincoln cent has survived many changes over the decades, including shifts in metal composition and design updates. Yet the image of Abraham Lincoln has remained constant, making it one of the most recognizable coins in the world. For many collectors, the 1970 penny represents an interesting moment in the history of the Lincoln cent series. It was minted during the final years before the U.S. Mint began changing the metal composition of the penny due to rising copper prices. In the early 1980s, pennies would switch to a zinc core with a thin copper coating. That means coins like the 1970 penny belong to the earlier era of heavier copper cents. Some collectors specifically seek out these older copper coins because they represent the traditional composition used for much of the 20th century. There are also plenty of surprising stories from people who have discovered valuable coins in unexpected places. Some collectors began their journey simply by checking the pennies they received as change at the grocery store. Others inherited jars of old coins from relatives and found hidden treasures inside. The thrill of the search is part of what makes coin collecting so exciting. Every coin has a story, and sometimes even a common coin can reveal something special if you look closely enough. Today, the 1970 Lincoln penny continues to attract attention from both beginners and experienced collectors. For newcomers, it is an accessible coin that can still be found in old collections or coin rolls. For advanced collectors, the challenge lies in finding the highest quality examples possible. Even after more than half a century, these coins remain part of everyday American history. They passed through countless hands, paid for small purchases, and quietly traveled across the country in pockets and cash registers, so the next time you see a penny dated 1970 with a small D beneath the year, take a closer look before you toss it aside. That tiny coin may not make you instantly rich, but it carries a fascinating connection to American history and the enduring legacy of the Lincoln cent, and who knows? Hidden among ordinary pocket change, there could still be a perfectly preserved example waiting to surprise the person curious enough to notice it. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a penny, and almost tossing it aside without a second thought. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary. But what if that tiny copper-colored coin quietly carried a story that collectors across the country are still searching for? What if a simple penny from 1989 could actually be worth far more than 1 cent? Today, we're taking a closer look at the 1989 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, it seems like just another coin from everyday pocket change. Millions of Americans used these coins without ever thinking twice about them. But for coin collectors and history lovers, this particular penny represents a fascinating piece of American coinage history. The Lincoln penny is one of the most recognizable coins ever produced in the United States. It was first introduced in 1909 to celebrate the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. This was a historic moment because it was the first time a real person appeared on a circulating U.S. coin. Before that, coins featured symbolic figures like Lady Liberty instead of actual historical figures. The design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner. On the front of the coin, also known as the obverse, you can see the detailed portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing to the right. Above his head is the word liberty, and the phrase "In God We Trust" curves along the top edge. On the right side of Lincoln's profile is the year the coin was minted. Now let's move to the reverse side. In 1989, the back of the Lincoln penny still featured the classic Wheat to Memorial era design known as the Lincoln Memorial Reverse. This design had been used since 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The Lincoln Memorial Building is shown in the center, And if you look very closely at a well-preserved coin, you can actually see a tiny image of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. The words United States of America appear across the top of the reverse, while 1 cent is boldly written at the bottom. Just above the memorial, you'll see the national motto E pluribus unum, which means, out of many, one. Now here's where the story becomes interesting. The 1989 Lincoln penny sometimes appears without a mint mark. For many people who are new to coin collecting, this can be confusing. They might assume that the missing mint mark is a rare error. But in most cases, the absence of a mint mark actually tells us something very specific about where the coin was made. A 1989 penny with no mint mark was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. For many years, coins struck in Philadelphia did not include a mint mark at all. That means millions of pennies from Philadelphia simply show the date without any letter underneath it. So if you find a 1989 penny without a mint mark, you're most likely holding a coin produced in Philadelphia. During that year, the Philadelphia Mint produced more than 7 billion Lincoln cents. That massive production number means most of these coins are still very common today. However, that doesn't mean every 1989 penny is worth just 1 cent. Condition plays a huge role in coin value. When collectors talk about coins, they often use the word grade to describe how well preserved a coin is. A coin that has spent decades in circulation usually shows scratches, fading details, and wear along the edges. But occasionally, a coin survives in near-perfect condition. Coins that remain bright, sharp, and almost untouched are known as mint-state coins. These are the types collectors love to find. A 1989 no-mint mark penny in typical circulated condition might only be worth a few cents. But a high-grade mint-state example can sell for much more. In fact, some certified mint-state 1989 pennies have sold for several dollars, sometimes even higher depending on their quality. Professional grading companies examine coins under magnification and assign them a number on a scale that ranges from 1 to 70. Coins graded in the mid to upper 60s can attract serious interest from collectors. But there's another factor that can make a coin far more valuable: errors. Mint errors happen when something goes wrong during the coin production process. Even though the United States Mint uses highly advanced machinery, mistakes can still occur. When they do, collectors often become very interested. Some 1989 pennies have been discovered with small but noticeable minting errors. One example is the double die error. This happens when the coin design is accidentally impressed twice during the die creation process, creating a slight doubling effect on letters or numbers. On certain coins, you might notice doubling in words like Liberty or In God We Trust. Another type of error collectors search for is an off-center strike. This happens when the coin blank is not perfectly aligned during the striking process, causing part of the design to appear shifted toward the edge. There are also coins known as broad strikes, where the coin is struck without the collar that normally shapes its edge. This can make the coin appear wider than normal. While most 1989 pennies were struck correctly, these rare error versions can be significantly more valuable. Depending on the type of error and the condition of the coin, some collectors have paid anywhere from $20 to several $100s for unique examples. One particularly interesting area collectors study is the metal composition of the coin. By 1989, Lincoln pennies were no longer made mostly of copper. In 1982, the United States Mint switched the composition to a zinc core with a thin copper coating. This change was made because the rising price of copper made the older composition too expensive to produce. That means a 1989 penny is made of about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper plating. Even though the coin looks like solid copper, the inside is mostly zinc. This change also created another unusual collecting category. Over time, the copper plating on some zinc pennies can wear away or bubble slightly due to environmental conditions. While these coins aren't necessarily rare, collectors sometimes enjoy studying these natural aging effects. If you're curious about checking your own coins, identifying a 1989 no-mint mark penny is fairly simple. First, look at the date on the front of the coin. Make sure it clearly reads 1989. Then look just below the date. If there is no letter such as D or S, the coin came from the Philadelphia Mint. Next, examine the coin carefully under good lighting. Look for unusual features like doubled letters, uneven edges, or parts of the design that seem slightly misaligned. A magnifying glass can be very helpful when checking for these details. Another important step is comparing your coin to verified examples from trusted coin resources. Professional coin grading companies often publish high-resolution images of known varieties and errors. It's also important to remember that real rarity usually comes from a combination of factors. The coin must be authentic, it must have a recognized error or extremely high grade, and it must appeal to collectors who want it for their collections. One fascinating fact about the Lincoln penny is how long this design has lasted. While many coin designs change every few decades, the Lincoln cent has been part of American daily life for more than a century. Generations of Americans have used these coins for everything from buying candy to filling piggy banks. The year 1989 itself was also an interesting time in history. The world was changing rapidly. The Cold War was nearing its end, the Berlin Wall would fall later that year, and technology was beginning to transform everyday life. Yet through all those changes, the humble Lincoln penny continued to pass quietly from hand to hand. Collectors often love coins not just because of their value, but because of the stories they carry. Every coin travels through countless pockets, wallets, and cash registers. Some coins are lost, others are saved, and a few eventually find their way into collections where they are preserved for future generations. For many collectors, searching through everyday change is part of the excitement. The idea that a valuable coin could still be hiding in plain sight makes the hobby both thrilling and accessible. Even today, people still discover interesting coins in old jars, inherited collections, or rolls of coins from the bank. Occasionally, a coin that seemed completely ordinary turns out to have a rare feature that collectors are eager to own. The 1989 no-mint mark Lincoln penny may not be the rarest coin ever produced, but it remains a small and meaningful piece of American history. For collectors, it represents a moment in the long timeline of the Lincoln cent series. For beginners, it's often one of the first coins they learn to examine closely, and that's part of what makes coin collecting so fascinating. A tiny object that most people overlook can open the door to history, craftsmanship, and discovery. So the next time you receive a handful of change, take a closer look before you spend it. That ordinary-looking penny might have traveled through decades of American life. And just maybe, one small detail could turn a 1-cent coin into a story worth far more than its face value. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and realizing that the tiny coin in your hand might be worth far more than 1 cent. It looks ordinary, worn from years of circulation, but collectors know that sometimes the most common coins hide the most interesting stories. One such coin is the 1994 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin millions of Americans have seen but very few have truly examined. The 1994 Lincoln penny is part of one of the longest-running coin series in United States history. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. For the first time in American history, a real person appeared on a circulating U.S. coin. That decision changed coin design forever. By 1994, the Lincoln penny had already been in circulation for 85 years, becoming one of the most recognizable coins in the country. At first glance, the 1994 penny without a mint mark may not seem special. In fact, millions of them were produced. But understanding why some coins do not carry a mint mark is the key to understanding their history and their potential value. In the United States, most coins are produced at different mint facilities. The major mints include Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Each mint typically places a small letter on the coin called a mint mark to show where it was made. A D means the coin was struck in Denver. An S means it was struck in San Francisco. However, if a Lincoln penny from 1994 has no mint mark at all, it means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. For many years, Philadelphia coins did not carry a mint mark. It was simply understood that coins without a letter came from Philadelphia. Because Philadelphia has historically been the largest mint in the United States, coins without mint marks were often produced in enormous quantities. In 1994, the Philadelphia Mint produced more than 6 billion Lincoln cents. That means the majority of pennies dated 1994 do not have a mint mark. With numbers that large, it might seem impossible that any could be valuable. But collectors know that rarity is not always about how many were made. Sometimes the real value comes from condition, errors, and unique characteristics that appeared during the minting process. The design of the 1994 Lincoln penny follows the traditional look that had been used for decades. On the front of the coin is the famous portrait of Abraham Lincoln. The design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner. Lincoln faces to the right, with the word Liberty on the left side and the date 1994 placed on the right. Above Lincoln's head are the words "In God We Trust," a phrase that appears on all modern United States coins. On the back of the coin is a design known as the Lincoln Memorial Reverse. This design was introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The Lincoln Memorial Building appears in the center, and if you look very closely, you can actually see a tiny image of the Lincoln statue inside the memorial. Many people have carried these coins for years without ever noticing that detail. The coin itself is made mostly of zinc. Beginning in 1982, the United States Mint changed the composition of the penny to reduce costs. Earlier pennies were mostly copper, but by the 1990s, the coin was made of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper coating. That gives the coin its familiar copper color even though the inside is primarily zinc. Now this is where things begin to get interesting for collectors. While billions of 1994 pennies were made, only a small percentage survive in perfect condition. Most coins entered circulation immediately and were used for everyday purchases. Over time they were scratched, worn, and damaged. Coins that remain bright, clean, and nearly untouched are much harder to find today. Collectors measure coin condition using a grading scale. Coins that show heavy wear are worth only face value. But coins that remain in what collectors call mint state condition can be worth much more. These coins still have their original shine, sharp details, and almost no signs of circulation. A 1994 Lincoln penny without a mint mark that is heavily circulated might still only be worth 1 cent. But if that same coin is preserved in mint state condition, collectors may pay several dollars or more for it. The highest quality coins can sometimes sell for significantly higher amounts depending on their grade. There are also certain mint errors from 1994 that collectors watch for very carefully. Mint errors happen when something unusual occurs during the coin's production. These errors can include doubled letters, off-center strikes, or other small mistakes that occur during the minting process. One example collectors search for is doubling on the lettering. This happens when the coin die shifts slightly during the striking process, creating a faint second image around the letters or numbers. When this occurs on words like Liberty or In God We Trust, it can make the coin much more desirable to collectors. Another error that occasionally appears is an off-center strike. That means the coin was not perfectly aligned when it was struck by the press. Part of the design may be missing, leaving blank metal on one side of the coin. Coins with dramatic off-center strikes are rare and can attract strong interest from collectors. There are also examples of coins with die cracks or unusual surface marks created during the minting process. While these imperfections might look like damage to an untrained eye, experienced collectors sometimes see them as fascinating pieces of mint history. Because of these factors, certain 1994 Lincoln pennies without a mint mark have sold for impressive prices in collector markets. High-grade examples graded by professional coin grading companies have sold for dozens of dollars, and in rare cases even more when the coin displays exceptional quality or unusual features. For example, a pristine 1994 Lincoln penny graded at the very highest levels of mint state can sometimes reach prices well above typical circulation coins. The difference between a worn penny and a nearly perfect one can mean the difference between 1 cent and a collector's item. If you are curious whether you might have one of these coins, there are a few simple things you can check. First, look closely at the date. Make sure the coin clearly reads 1994. Next, check under the date to see if there is a mint mark. If there is no letter at all, then the coin was produced in Philadelphia. After that, examine the coin's condition. Look for bright original color, sharp lines in Lincoln's hair, and clean details in the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. The more detail the coin retains, the more appealing it may be to collectors. A magnifying glass can also help you inspect the lettering for signs of doubling or unusual features. Many collectors enjoy the process of searching through pocket change, rolls of pennies, or old coin jars looking for small details others might miss. Another important tip is to avoid cleaning the coin. Many people believe that cleaning a coin will make it more valuable, but the opposite is usually true. Cleaning can scratch the surface and remove the original finish that collectors value. Even a gentle cleaning can lower a coin's value dramatically. One of the fascinating things about the 1994 Lincoln penny is how easily it can be overlooked. Unlike famous rare coins that collectors immediately recognize, this coin blends in with everyday pocket change. That means valuable examples might still be hiding in jars, drawers, or old collections across the country. There are also fun historical connections tied to this coin. In 1994, the United States was experiencing a period of rapid technological growth. The internet was just beginning to spread into homes, and many everyday items were transitioning into the digital age. Yet the humble penny continued to circulate widely, linking modern America with more than a century of coin history. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Cent series has survived many economic changes. The cost of producing pennies has often been debated, yet the coin remains a familiar part of American culture. The 1994 penny is part of that continuing story. Collectors today appreciate the Lincoln penny series not only for its history but also for the excitement of discovery. Even common dates can become valuable depending on condition or mint errors. That makes every coin worth a second look. For many collectors, the thrill comes from searching through ordinary coins and suddenly finding something special. The possibility that a simple penny might be worth far more than its face value keeps people examining their change year after year. So the next time you see a 1994 Lincoln penny without a mint mark, take a moment before you spend it. Look closely at its color, its details, and its condition. What appears to be just another coin could actually be a small piece of American history waiting to be appreciated. Because in the world of coin collecting, even the smallest coin can hold a surprising story. And sometimes the most ordinary pennies are the ones that turn out to be the most interesting of all. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and realizing that the tiny copper coin in your hand might be worth far more than 1 cent. For most people, a penny is the smallest and least important coin in everyday change. But for collectors, certain pennies hide surprising stories and sometimes surprising value. One of those coins is the 1998 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, it looks completely ordinary, just like millions of other pennies produced in the late 1990s. But when you look closer, you begin to understand why this coin has caught the attention of collectors across the United States. The 1998 Lincoln penny is part of a long tradition of American coins that began more than a century ago. The Lincoln Cent first appeared in 1909 to celebrate the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. It was the first circulating U.S. coin to feature a real historical person instead of a symbolic image like Liberty. The design became instantly recognizable, and over the decades it remained one of the most widely produced coins in American history. By 1998, the Lincoln penny had already been circulating for nearly 90 years, and billions were produced each year to meet the needs of everyday commerce. In 1998, the United States Mint struck Lincoln pennies at several facilities. The Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint all produced coins, but not all of them were meant for circulation. Pennies produced in Philadelphia traditionally carried no mint mark at all, while those made in Denver displayed a small D under the date. San Francisco typically produced proof coins for collectors, marked with an S. So when collectors talk about a 1998 penny with no mint mark, they are referring to a coin made at the Philadelphia Mint. Because Philadelphia historically did not add a mint mark to its cents, these coins appear blank beneath the date. At first, this might make the coin sound extremely common, and in many ways it is. The Philadelphia Mint produced well over 5 billion pennies in 1998 alone. That means millions of these coins passed through cash registers, vending machines, and piggy banks all across America. However, coin collecting is not only about how many coins were made. It is also about the details hidden within those coins. Small variations, tiny mistakes during the minting process, and unusual conditions can turn an ordinary coin into something collectors eagerly search for. The 1998 Lincoln penny features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front. The design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner and has remained one of the most recognizable coin portraits in U.S. history. On the front of the coin, Lincoln faces to the right. Above his head are the words, "In God We Trust." To the left is the word Liberty, and the date appears on the right side. On coins made in Philadelphia, there is no mint mark under the date, which is why collectors describe them as no-mint mark pennies. The reverse side of the coin shows the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look very closely at the center of the memorial building on the coin, you can actually see a tiny image of the Lincoln statue sitting inside. This small detail is one of the most fascinating elements of the design because it means Lincoln appears on both sides of the coin. Above the memorial are the words United States of America and E pluribus unum, while the denomination 1 cent appears at the bottom. BY 1998. The composition of the penny had already changed from the solid copper coins produced earlier in the century. Modern Lincoln cents were made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. This composition was introduced in 1982 to reduce production costs. As a result, the 1998 penny contains about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. While that might make the coin sound less valuable as metal, the real interest for collectors lies in the minting process and the potential errors that can occur. One of the most talked about varieties involving the 1998 penny is the 1998 wide AM reverse. Normally, the letters A and M in the word America on the back of the coin are placed very close together on coins meant for circulation. However, proof coins made for collectors used a slightly different design where the A and M were spaced farther apart. Somehow, a small number of circulation pennies in 1998 were struck using the proof-style reverse design. This created what collectors now call the 1998 wide AM penny. If you happen to find a 1998 penny with no mint mark and the wide AM spacing on the reverse, you may have discovered something much more interesting than an ordinary coin. The difference is subtle, but collectors know exactly what to look for. When the A and M in America are clearly separated and not touching, it indicates the wide AM variety. These coins are far less common than regular 1998 pennies, which is why collectors search for them in rolls of coins and old jars of spare change. Over the years, examples of the 1998 wide AM penny have sold for impressive prices compared to their original 1 cent value. In average circulated condition, the coin might sell for a few dollars. But in higher grades, especially coins that remain in near-perfect condition, the value can increase dramatically. Some well-preserved examples graded by professional coin grading services have sold for hundreds of dollars. In rare cases, pristine coins with strong luster and minimal marks have reached prices approaching $1,000 at auction. Condition plays a huge role in determining the value of any coin. A penny that spent years in circulation usually shows scratches, dull color, and worn details. But a coin that was carefully stored shortly after it was minted may still shine with its original copper color. Collectors call this original brightness, mint luster. Coins that retain this fresh appearance are much more desirable and can command significantly higher prices in the collector market. If you want to check whether you might have a valuable 1998 penny, there are a few simple steps you can follow. First, look at the front of the coin and confirm that the date reads 1998 and that there is no mint mark under the date. This tells you the coin was struck in Philadelphia. Next, flip the coin over and examine the word America. Use a magnifying glass if possible. Look closely at the letters A and M. If the two letters are touching or nearly touching, the coin has the common close AM design. But if there is a noticeable gap between them, you may have the wide AM variety collectors search for. Another important step is checking the overall condition of the coin. Avoid cleaning the coin because cleaning can actually reduce its value. Collectors prefer coins with their original surfaces untouched. If you believe you have a rare example, it may be worth sending the coin to a professional grading service where experts can authenticate and grade it. A certified coin often sells for higher prices because buyers trust the official evaluation. One interesting fact about modern pennies like the 1998 Lincoln cent is that many valuable varieties were discovered not by mint employees, but by ordinary collectors searching through pocket change. This tradition is known as coin roll hunting. Enthusiasts visit banks, obtain rolls of pennies, and carefully examine each coin in hopes of finding unusual dates, errors, or rare varieties. It is a hobby that requires patience, but occasionally it leads to exciting discoveries. Another surprising detail about the 1998 penny is how such a tiny design difference could remain unnoticed for years. The wide AM variety was not immediately recognized when the coins were first released into circulation. It took careful observation by collectors comparing different coins before the variety became widely known. Once the discovery spread through the collecting community, people across the country began checking their pennies more closely. Collectors today love coins like the 1998 Wide AM penny because they represent a hidden story inside everyday money. These coins remind people that even the smallest denomination in American currency can hold surprises. The thrill of finding something rare in ordinary change keeps many collectors engaged in the hobby for decades. For many people, coin collecting begins with curiosity. A child might notice an unusual design, a different date, or a coin that looks older than the rest. Over time, that curiosity grows into a deeper interest in history, art, and the minting process. Coins like the 1998 Lincoln penny become small windows into the story of how money is made and how tiny variations can create something unique. So the next time you receive change at a store or notice a handful of pennies sitting in a jar at home, take a moment to look a little closer. Among those ordinary coins could be a piece of modern minting history hiding in plain sight. The 1998 Lincoln penny with no mint mark might appear common at first glance, but under the right conditions and with the right details, it can become a fascinating collectible. And that is part of the magic of coin collecting. A single cent, overlooked by most people, can turn into a small treasure simply because someone took the time to notice the details. The question is simple but exciting. How many rare pennies are still out there, quietly waiting in pockets, jars, and cash drawers across the country, just waiting for someone curious enough to find them? Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a single penny, and discovering that the tiny coin in your hand might be worth far more than 1 cent. Most people never look twice at the pennies they receive in change. They drop them in jars, leave them in drawers, or forget about them entirely. But sometimes, an ordinary-looking penny hides a story that collectors find fascinating. Today we are exploring the 2006 D-Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that many people have seen but very few have truly examined. The Lincoln penny is one of the most recognizable coins in American history. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. Since then, billions of Lincoln cents have been produced, and they remain a common part of everyday transactions in the United States. By the year 2006, the Lincoln cent had already been circulating for nearly a century, yet it still carried the same familiar portrait of Lincoln on the front. The 2006 D-Mint Mark Lincoln penny was produced at the Denver Mint. The small letter D, found just below the date, indicates that the coin was struck in Denver, Colorado. In that year, the Denver Mint produced billions of these pennies for circulation across the country. On the surface, that might make the coin sound extremely common, and in many ways it is. But within those billions of coins are small variations, high-grade examples, and rare mint errors that collectors actively search for today. To understand why collectors care about this coin, it helps to look at its design. On the front, also known as the obverse, is the famous portrait of Abraham Lincoln created by sculptor Victor David Brenner. Lincoln faces to the right with the word Liberty placed to the left of his portrait. Above his head are the words "In God We Trust," a phrase that has appeared on U.S. coins for many decades. The date, 2006, sits to the right, with the small D mint mark just beneath it. The back of the 2006 Lincoln penny features the Lincoln Memorial. This design was introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely at the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse side, you can even see a tiny representation of the Lincoln statue sitting inside the memorial. This small detail makes the Lincoln cent one of the few coins in the world to feature the same historical figure on both sides of the coin. The coin itself is made mostly of zinc with a thin copper plating. Since 1982, most Lincoln cents have followed this metal composition, weighing about 2.5 grams. The copper coating gives the coin its familiar reddish color when it is new. Over time, however, circulation causes the surface to darken, creating the brown tone that most people associate with older pennies. While millions of these coins were produced, collectors pay special attention to condition. A 2006 D penny that has been heavily used in circulation might only be worth its face value. But when a coin survives in nearly perfect condition, something remarkable happens. High-grade coins that show sharp details, bright surfaces, and almost no wear can become surprisingly valuable in the collector market. Professional grading services evaluate coins using a scale that goes from 1 to 70. A coin graded close to 70 means it appears almost exactly as it did when it left the mint. Finding a 2006 Lincoln penny in such pristine condition is much harder than people might think. Even tiny scratches, fingerprints, or contact marks can reduce a coin's grade. Because of this, collectors are always searching through rolls of pennies and old collections hoping to find a perfect example. A top-quality 2006 penny graded in mint condition has sold for significantly more than 1 cent. In some cases, collectors have paid dozens or even hundreds of dollars for coins that appear flawless under magnification. But condition is only part of the story. Another reason collectors watch for the 2006 penny is the possibility of mint errors. Mint errors happen during the coin production process, and they create coins that look slightly different from normal ones. These differences may include doubled letters, off-center strikes, or unusual surface marks caused during minting. One error collectors sometimes search for is called a doubled die. This occurs when the design of the coin is accidentally impressed twice during the creation of the die that strikes the coins. When this happens, parts of the lettering or numbers may appear slightly doubled. Although not every year produces dramatic examples, collectors still examine 2006 pennies closely in hopes of spotting subtle doubling. Another error involves off-center strikes. During the minting process, if the metal blank is not perfectly aligned when the coin is struck, part of the design may appear shifted toward one side. Coins like this can look unusual and immediately catch the attention of collectors. Occasionally, coins are also struck with weak or missing details because of worn dies or improper pressure. While many of these coins are minor variations, some become collectible simply because they are different from the standard design. Over the years, collectors have reported interesting examples of 2006 pennies appearing in online auctions and coin shows. A regular circulated example might be worth only 1 cent, but a brilliant uncirculated coin graded in the highest mint state levels can bring much higher prices. In rare cases where a coin combines excellent condition with a noticeable mint error, collectors have been willing to pay hundreds of dollars. Stories like these are exactly why so many people search through their pocket change. The possibility that an everyday coin might carry unexpected value makes the hobby of coin collecting exciting and accessible to almost anyone. If you ever want to check whether you have a genuine 2006 Lincoln penny worth saving, there are a few simple things to look for. First, examine the date and the mint mark under good lighting. The small d should appear clear and well-defined beneath the year. Next, study the surfaces of the coin. Coins that have bright color and sharp details often attract more interest from collectors. A small magnifying glass can also help you inspect the lettering and numbers. Look closely at the words, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date. If you notice unusual doubling or shapes that appear slightly shifted, it may be worth showing the coin to a professional coin dealer or submitting it for grading. Weight can also confirm authenticity. A normal 2006 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. While most counterfeits are rare for modern pennies, verifying the weight can still be a useful step when evaluating any coin. Beyond its value, the 2006 Lincoln penny also carries some fascinating details. For example, billions of these coins were produced during a time when many Americans had already begun to question whether the penny should remain in circulation. Despite debates about its usefulness, the Lincoln cent continues to be minted today, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in United States history. Another interesting fact is that the Lincoln Memorial design that appears on the reverse of the 2006 penny would soon come to an end. Just 3 years later, in 2009, the United States Mint introduced 4 new reverse designs to celebrate the bicentennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. After that special year, the reverse design changed again to the Union Shield that appears on modern pennies today. This means the 2006 penny represents one of the final years of the classic Lincoln Memorial reverse design that had been used for half a century. For many collectors, that connection to a long tradition adds another layer of historical interest to the coin. Collectors today appreciate the 2006 Lincoln penny not because it is the rarest coin in existence, but because it represents the hidden potential of everyday money. It reminds people that valuable discoveries are sometimes hiding in the most ordinary places. A simple penny can travel through thousands of hands, pass through countless transactions, and still survive long enough to be noticed by someone who looks a little closer. For coin collectors, that moment of discovery is what makes the hobby so rewarding. So the next time you receive a handful of change, take a second look at the pennies. Check the dates, examine the mint marks, and notice the details that most people ignore. Among those coins could be a brilliant 2006 Lincoln penny in exceptional condition, or maybe even an unusual mint error waiting to be discovered. Because sometimes the smallest coin in your pocket carries the biggest surprise. And the story of the 2006 mint mark Lincoln penny proves that even a single cent can hold history, mystery, and the possibility of unexpected value. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a penny that most people would spend without a second thought. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, but what if that small copper-colored coin quietly carried a story that collectors across America are paying attention to? Today we're taking a closer look at a coin many people have already seen but rarely examined closely. The 2015 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance it seems like just another modern cent, but behind its simple appearance is a fascinating story about American history, coin production, and the surprising world of coin collecting. The Lincoln penny has been part of everyday American life for more than a century. First introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, it became the first regular U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure. Before that, American coins mostly showed symbolic images like Lady Liberty. Over the decades, billions of Lincoln cents have been produced, and they continue to circulate in pockets, jars, and piggy banks across the country. The 2015 Lincoln penny belongs to the modern era of this long-running coin series. In 2015, the United States Mint produced billions of pennies to keep up with everyday commerce. These coins were struck mainly at two facilities, the Denver Mint and the Philadelphia Mint. Coins made in Denver carry a small D mint mark below the date, while coins made in Philadelphia traditionally have no mint mark at all. That means when you see a 2015 penny with no mint mark, it was made at the Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most historic mints in the United States. The Philadelphia Mint has been producing coins since the late 1700s, and it has played a central role in American coinage for more than 2 centuries. In 2015 alone, Philadelphia struck billions of Lincoln cents, making them a common sight in circulation. But even common coins can hold interesting details once you start looking closely. The front of the 2015 Lincoln penny features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln that Americans have seen for generations. This portrait was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner and first appeared on the penny in 1909. Lincoln is shown facing to the right, with the word Liberty on the left side of the coin and the year 2015 on the right. Above his head is the national motto, "In God We Trust." If you turn the coin over, you'll notice a design that looks different from the wheat pennies many collectors know. Since 2010, the reverse of the Lincoln cent has featured a shield design. This shield represents Lincoln's role in preserving the United States during the Civil War. The shield has 13 vertical stripes joined by a single horizontal bar across the top, symbolizing the unity of the states under one federal government. Across the shield runs a banner with the words 1 cent, and above it you'll see United States of America. Although the design is modern, the materials used in the coin have a story of their own. Many people believe pennies are made entirely of copper, but that hasn't been true for decades. The 2015 Lincoln penny is actually made mostly of zinc, with only a thin copper coating on the outside. This composition has been used since 1982, when rising copper prices forced the mint to switch to a more affordable metal combination. Each 2015 penny weighs about 2.5 grams and has a smooth edge, which coin collectors call a plain edge. Its diameter is about 19 millimeters, making it one of the smallest coins in American circulation. So if billions were made and the design is familiar, why do collectors still pay attention to the 2015 no mint mark penny? The answer lies in condition and in the possibility of mint errors. Most pennies travel through the economy for years. They get scratched, worn, and sometimes damaged. But occasionally, a coin is saved early and remains in near-perfect condition. Collectors call these high-grade coins mint state, meaning they show little to no wear. When a modern penny like the 2015 Philadelphia issue survives in exceptional condition, it can become surprisingly valuable to collectors who want the best examples for their collections. For example, a typical circulated 2015 penny with no mint mark might only be worth its face value. But a perfectly preserved coin graded at the very top levels by professional grading services can sell for far more. Some high-grade examples have sold for dozens or even hundreds of dollars depending on their quality and eye appeal. Another factor that excites collectors is the possibility of minting errors. Errors occur during the coin production process when something unusual happens at the mint. These mistakes are rare compared to the total number of coins produced, which makes them especially interesting to collectors. With the 2015 Lincoln penny, collectors sometimes look for double dies, off-center strikes, or unusual surface features caused during minting. A double die occurs when part of the design appears slightly doubled, often visible in the lettering or numbers. Off-center strikes happen when the coin blank isn't perfectly aligned with the dies during the strike, causing part of the design to be shifted toward the edge. When genuine mint errors are discovered on modern coins like the 2015 penny, their value can increase dramatically depending on the severity and visibility of the mistake. Some error pennies have sold for hundreds of dollars simply because they display something unusual that most coins do not. Collectors also enjoy searching through rolls of pennies looking for coins that appear brighter or sharper than the rest. Sometimes a coin will show a beautiful reddish color known as full red, which indicates that the copper surface has remained largely untouched by oxidation. These bright red coins are especially desirable in high grades because most pennies gradually turn brown as they age. If you want to check whether you have a 2015 penny with no mint mark, the process is simple. First, look at the front of the coin near the date. If there is no small letter such as D, then it was struck in Philadelphia. Next, examine the surface closely under good lighting. Look for strong detail in Lincoln's hair, sharp lettering, and minimal scratches. Coins that look nearly perfect are the ones collectors value the most. Some people also use magnifying glasses or small coin loupes to search for unusual doubling or striking errors. These tools help reveal tiny details that are difficult to see with the naked eye. Of course, when coins appear unusually valuable, people sometimes worry about counterfeits. Fortunately, modern pennies like the 2015 issue are rarely faked because their base value is low. Still, if a coin seems unusually perfect or shows a strange feature, collectors often send it to professional grading companies for authentication. These services examine the coin, confirm whether it is genuine, and assign it a condition grade. Another interesting detail about the 2015 penny is how it fits into the larger story of American coin collecting today. Even though the coin itself is modern and widely circulated, it reminds collectors that valuable discoveries can still happen in everyday change. Many hobbyists began collecting simply by checking their pocket coins, looking for something unusual. There are also fun facts connected to the Lincoln penny series that make coins like the 2015 issue part of a much bigger legacy. The Lincoln cent is one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. Over the years, its reverse design has changed several times, from wheat ears to the Lincoln Memorial, and now to the Union Shield. Each version tells a different chapter of the country's story. Another surprising detail is how many pennies Americans have produced. Since the Lincoln cent was introduced in 1909, hundreds of billions have been struck. That means almost every American has handled one at some point in their life. Yet despite these enormous numbers, collectors continue searching through coins because occasionally something special appears. A rare error, an unusually high-grade example, or a coin preserved in pristine condition can still capture attention in the collecting community. For many collectors, the joy is not just about the money. It's about the thrill of discovery. A simple coin from a cash register or a jar of spare change might hold a tiny detail that turns it into something collectible. The 2015 Lincoln penny with no mint mark represents that idea perfectly. On the surface, it looks like an ordinary coin that millions of people overlook every day. But to collectors, it is another piece of the long story of American coinage, one that invites curiosity and careful observation. So the next time you receive a handful of change, take a closer look at the pennies. Check the date. Look for the mint mark. Notice the shine, the color, and the tiny details in the design. Because sometimes the most ordinary coins are the ones that spark the greatest curiosity. And who knows, the next penny you examine might not just be worth 1 cent. It might be the start of a discovery that leads you deeper into the fascinating world of coin collecting. Most people see a penny and think it's almost worthless. It's the coin that gets tossed into jars, lost under couch cushions, or forgotten in a car's cup holder. But what if one of those pennies, a coin made as recently as 2020, could actually be worth far more than just 1 cent? Today, we're taking a closer look at the 2020 Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a modern coin that may look ordinary, yet holds surprising stories, unique details, and even the potential for collector value that many people completely overlook. The 2020 Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced by the United States Mint at the Denver Mint facility. The small D mint mark that appears on the coin tells us exactly where it was made. At first glance, it looks very similar to other modern pennies. It carries the familiar portrait of President Abraham Lincoln on the front, a design that has been a part of American coinage for more than a century. But like many coins in circulation, the true story of this penny goes deeper than its simple appearance. To understand the 2020 penny, it helps to go back in time. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Before that moment, American coins did not typically feature real historical figures. The decision to place Lincoln's portrait on the penny was a major shift in U.S. coin design, and it marked the beginning of a tradition that continues today. Over the decades, the Lincoln penny has gone through several design changes on its reverse side. For many years it showed 2 wheat stalks, then the Lincoln Memorial, and later the Union Shield design that we see today. By the time the year 2020 arrived, the Union Shield had already been in use for several years, representing national unity and strength. The year 2020 itself was historic for many reasons. It was a time when the world faced major challenges and changes. During that same period, the United States Mint continued producing billions of coins to keep the economy moving. Among those coins were millions of Lincoln cents struck at the Denver Mint, each marked with the small letter D beneath the date. Even though billions of pennies are made each year, collectors know that not every coin is exactly the same. Small differences during the minting process can create variations that make certain coins much more interesting. These differences might be tiny errors, unusual strike characteristics, or coins that were preserved in exceptional condition. The 2020 Lincoln penny is made primarily of zinc with a thin copper plating. Since 1982, most Lincoln cents have been produced using this composition, which keeps the coins lightweight and affordable to manufacture. Each coin weighs about 2.5 grams and measures 19 millimeters across. On the front of the coin, known as the obverse, you'll see the right-facing portrait of Abraham Lincoln designed by Victor David Brenner. Above Lincoln's head is the word liberty, while the phrase "In God We Trust" curves along the top edge. To the right of Lincoln, just below the year 2020, you'll find the small D mint mark that identifies the Denver Mint. Turn the coin over, and you'll see the Union Shield design. This shield represents the strength and unity of the United States. Across the shield runs a banner with the words E pluribus unum, a Latin phrase meaning out of many, one. Above the shield are the words United States of America, and below it you'll see the denomination 1 cent. At first glance, it might seem like there's nothing unusual about this penny. But collectors always pay attention to the details, because sometimes the smallest differences can make a big impact. One of the most interesting aspects of modern coins like the 2020 penny is the possibility of mint errors. These errors occur during the striking process when something doesn't happen exactly as planned. For example, a coin might be struck slightly off-center, meaning the design isn't perfectly aligned with the edge. In other cases, you might find a double die error, where parts of the design appear slightly doubled because of a misalignment during the die creation process. Some collectors have reported minor doubled lettering on certain 2020 pennies, although major confirmed varieties are relatively rare. Even so, the possibility of these errors keeps collectors carefully examining their pocket change. Another factor that can increase the value of a 2020 Lincoln penny is condition. Most pennies enter circulation quickly, and they begin to collect scratches, marks, and wear almost immediately. But coins that remain in near-perfect condition, known as mint state coins, can be much more desirable to collectors. A 2020 penny that has been preserved without circulation marks, with bright original luster and sharp details, can sometimes sell for several dollars to collectors who are building high-quality sets. While that might not sound like a fortune, it's a significant increase from the coin's face value of just 1 cent. In rare cases, coins graded at extremely high levels by professional grading companies can sell for even more. Collectors often seek coins graded MS67 or higher, meaning the coin is nearly flawless under magnification. At that level of quality, even modern coins can attract strong interest from serious collectors. There have been online auction listings where pristine examples of the 2020 Lincoln Penny have sold for anywhere from $5 to $20 depending on condition and demand. If the coin features an unusual mint error, the value can rise even further, sometimes reaching $50 or more for particularly noticeable mistakes. Of course, finding one of these valuable examples requires a careful eye. Many people spend pennies without ever looking closely at them, which means interesting coins can easily pass through circulation unnoticed. If you want to check whether you might have a collectible 2020 penny, there are a few things to look for. Start by examining the mint mark beneath the date. The letter D confirms the coin was struck in Denver. Then check the surface of the coin under good lighting. Look for unusual doubling in the letters or numbers, off-center strikes, or areas where the metal appears slightly distorted. Next, consider the coin's overall condition. A shiny coin with very few marks and strong details is far more appealing to collectors than one that has been heavily worn. Even small differences in condition can make a noticeable difference in value. Another interesting detail about modern Lincoln cents is how widely they circulate. Because so many are produced each year, these coins travel across the country through banks, stores, and everyday transactions. A penny minted in Denver might end up thousands of miles away within just a few months. For collectors, that means valuable coins can appear in the most unexpected places. Some people have discovered collectible pennies in rolls from the bank, while others have found them in loose change from a grocery store purchase. There are also collectors who specialize in building complete year-in-mint sets of Lincoln pennies. For them, coins like the 2020 cent represent an important part of a long historical series that stretches back more than a century. Every year and every mint mark adds another piece to the story. One surprising fact about the Lincoln penny is that it's the longest-running coin design in American history. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln has remained on the penny since 1909, making it a familiar symbol that has lasted through generations of change. Another fun detail is that the Denver Mint itself has a fascinating history. Established in the early 1900s during the American gold and silver boom, it eventually became one of the primary coin-producing facilities in the country. Today, it continues to strike billions of coins every year, including pennies like the 2020. Even though the penny is sometimes debated because of its low face value, it still holds a special place in American culture. Many people collect them, save them, or use them in traditions like wishing wells and lucky coins. For collectors, the excitement often comes from the possibility that an ordinary-looking coin could turn out to be something special. A tiny minting error, an unusually perfect strike, or a coin preserved in flawless condition can transform a 1-cent piece into a collectible item. That sense of discovery is one of the reasons people continue to search through their change. Every handful of coins carries a small chance of revealing something rare or unusual, so the next time you see a 2020 Lincoln penny, take a moment before you spend it. Look closely at the date, the mint mark, and the details of the design. You might just notice something that others have missed. Because in the world of coin collecting, even the smallest coin can hold a story. And sometimes that story is worth far more than a single cent.